Hi there, this is Ben Spinks, and I wanted to walk you through how to use this treatment price update index. The first thing that you're going to need to do is access some data in your practice management software. The process for this is going to vary depending on the platform that you use. The important thing, though, is extracting 5 different pieces of information. So what we're looking to pull out is all of your treatment codes. We're going to ignore any inventory codes. The assumption being that your inventory codes you're going to be updating on a regular basis. Your treatment prices, however, may be done less frequently. A lot of people are doing those on a 12-month basis or maybe a 6-month basis. So with that in mind, the 5 pieces of information that we need to pull out, we need to pull the category, the code, the description, the number of occurrences that code has had, or the number of times it's been used in the past 12 months, and then finally the code's current price. So those are the 5 things that we're going to be pulling out. I'm going to go ahead and copy these first 3 columns just because I know those are together on the spreadsheet. So I'll go ahead and copy those. And I'm going to jump over to the treatment price update index itself. And if I just click in this first cell in row 7 and go ahead and paste in my information, this will kind of get me started. The columns that are where we need to paste the data have these PIMs in parentheses up above them. So these are the 5 that we're going to be using. If I go back over to my kind of scratch pad here and grab the next column worth of data. This one in particular, you might want to be a little careful with. There is some conditional formatting on this column, so I'm going to go ahead and right-click on it and go down to Paste Special, and then paste the values only. That'll keep my conditional formatting intact. And then finally, I'll go back to my temp data and grab this last column worth of data, the current price. Let's see here. Here we go. So that finally goes here again on row 7, and we'll paste that in. So as you can see, Google Sheets here is kind of cranking away to put this conditional formatting in place and to do some other calculations. Let's kind of walk through the different areas or the different things you need to adjust right away. We'll just start on the left and work our way across. One of the first things you'll want to indicate are codes that you consider to be shopped or shop prices, things like that. Anything that clients are calling you about on a regular basis, or any code that you in particular want to be competitive with your peers, other practices in the area, if there's any kind of pricing sensitivity. To mark those, all you need to do is find a particular code. Like I have this biohazard waste management fee in this particular data set, and these codes are kind of a mashup of several different practices codes just to kind of anonymize things. So you'll see a wide range of things included here. But I could do that. I could, for instance, come down to my examinations, and maybe I want to go ahead and say my exams are shopped. That's something I want to tweak a little bit more carefully. I could come down to, for instance, we've got some wellness plans here. So let's go ahead and do that. Maybe those are calculated a little bit more carefully, and maybe I've paid to have a bunch of brochures made, and I don't want to have to make new ones. So I'm going to make sure those prices stay the same. So basically, I just want to go through and make any notations for prices that I don't want to change automatically. So that's kind of the deal with the shop price column. The next thing we're going to run across are these columns here. And this is basically all tied in to column E here, level of importance. And what this is doing is it's helping us identify codes that either occur really frequently or they produce a lot of revenue in the practice. The thought being, if those are 2 factors that are true for any given code, we probably want to scrutinize it a little bit more than a code that we only do once a year or once a month. So the 2 things you can kind of adjust here, one is the occurrence threshold. So this is just saying what's kind of the threshold for what you consider to be often. For me, at my practice, we're open 7 days a week. So I like to say 365. I know if I put this in here, it's going to highlight automatically any cell that includes a number greater than or equal to 365, which implies that we're doing that particular code or treatment once per day on average. So you can adjust that however you want. If you were only open 6 days a week, you could do the math If you wanted to adjust it to 500, that's fine. You can adjust it, and it automatically will reformat all those columns, or I should say rows. The other thing you can adjust is this cumulative percent of total revenue threshold. And this kind of falls back on the idea of the 80-20 principle or the Pareto principle, where we're basically saying, a very small subset of your codes produce 80% of your practice's treatment revenue. So I'm going to go ahead and take this column and actually sort it, starting with the largest amount at the top and going down. So what we're doing here is just seeing what the current revenue is on an annual basis for any given code. This happens to be an exam code, medical or sick exam, I think, for this particular practice. So what we'll see if I start scrolling down here is, out of, I think in this data set that we're kind of playing around with here, we have maybe 500 codes. But by the time I get to row 74, which I think we have 6 above here, so that's 68 of the 500 codes generate 80% of the revenue in this particular data set. And the nice thing is you can come in here and adjust this however you want. So if I want to come in and say 82%, for instance, it automatically will highlight the additional items necessary to get us to that point. I just like 80. That's kind of the benchmark that I use when I do this type of analysis. So what you'll find is the way this level of importance works, 1 would be the highest priority, 4 would be the lowest, and how it calculates that is if both of these columns are highlighted in green, it will consider it to be a 1. If only one of the 2 columns is highlighted in green, it becomes a 2. If neither column is green, but we do actually use the code, it's a 3. And then, unfortunately, I think all of us have some of those ghosts in the machine codes that never get used and probably should be purged from our system. So those are just set up as a number 4. So those are a few of the things you can adjust. I'm going to go ahead and sort this again by my category here. And the next thing that we can adjust is the default percentage increase. So this is where you basically can say, unless I tell you otherwise, I want you by default to increase this, code's current price from where it's at up 3% in this particular case. Or you can change that to whatever you want it to be. All of this will auto-calculate for you. For our example, I'll go ahead and leave it at 3. The following columns are where you basically can start to override the default. So you can see here, this particular practice has a biohazard fee. We've marked that as a shop price, so we don't want that to adjust. But let's say that I actually do want it to adjust. I just wanted to have a little bit more control over it. Here's where I can make those adjustments. The same thing down with our exam codes. And there's 3 different ways you can make the adjustment. You can base it off a percentage. So just like the default's 3%, I could come in and say, I want this particular exam code to go up 10%. It would calculate the adjustment based off a percentage. If I had a specific dollar amount in mind, I wanted to go up $5, I could do that. Or alternately, if I just actually had a price in my head that I wanted to use after doing some research, I could just type in the final price. So really, I want it to be $44 for this particular code. So that's 3 different ways you can kind of calculate that. The thing to keep in mind is you can't use them together. So you have to pick one of the 3 options for each of the codes. You can't do a percentage and a dollar amount or any crazy combination. This U column is where your new prices will show up. So after you've taken into account either the default increase or an override or the fact that you've asked the system not to adjust it at all, this will be kind of the end result of that. This is definitely what you're kind of keeping your eye on as you go. Notes and comments, what I like to use this for is if I've utilized an override of some kind. Let's say I've done some research. I've used one of the tools in my toolbox. We have the AHA fee reference. We have other industry benchmarks. We could use Profit Solver. We could do price shopping with our competitors. Whatever the circumstances are, if I'm doing something out of the ordinary and I'm working with a team on this, I could come in and say, AHA has this for our demographics around $53. Or whatever notations you want to use. But it's basically a way to kind of keep track of why you've made some of the changes you've made if you're doing it by yourself, or if you're working with a team, you can kind of leave notes back and forth and get consensus on what you're doing. I like to definitely keep these. Once I've finished with one of these, I don't change it anymore. If I have to use the spreadsheet again, I come down and actually duplicate this tab. That allows me basically to go back in time, every 6 months or every 12 months, however often we've made a price adjustment. I can go back and kind of see what my rationale was and actually see how things have changed over time if I want to look at it that way. Going a little further, column W is just going to summarize what the percentage change is. Most of these are set at 3% just because that was our default. Anything that I've set an override in will show a higher amount. If I've marked something as a shop price, it will show 0%. If I could actually reduce the price for one of these. Let's say that I actually want to bring this down. I could come down $5. It'll indicate that you've dropped a little bit, and obviously call your attention to that. If there's a need for it, though, it's there. Column X here helps us track and project what the implications will be for our revenue. So obviously this is based on the assumption that the number of times the code's used is going to remain relatively steady. Maybe you dramatically change the price and people stop accepting that service, or you stop using it. There's obviously external factors that could maybe influence that, but all things being equal, assuming that kind of the next 12 months are similar to the 12 months of data that you're looking at, this will kind of show you the impact it's going to have in terms of revenue from your treatments. So this will be summed up here at the top. So in this particular case, with our kind of imaginary data set here, this is going to have an $89,000 impact on this practice. And column Y, this is where after we've kind of locked this in and we know what we're doing, we've made our decisions, we've had our powwows if we have to kind of come to consensus on some of these prices. Whoever gets assigned the job, or multiple people of kind of inputting these into our practice management software, they would just put in their initials, as they went down the column. And then finally, if there was an exception, or if there's anything they need to notate, the updater themselves can come in here and put that in. So the final columns here are just set up so that if you want to project out how your prices will adjust over time, you can. If you want to go into a model where you're adjusting every 6 months with smaller increments, you can, say, hey, I'm going to put this up 2% in another 6 months. You can put the data in 6 months from now, and then in another 6 months after that, I want to do it another 1.5. This kind of allows you to see how that's going to impact the bottom line. One other thing worth mentioning, this category column is set up so that you can sort it. So I can actually come in here and look at subsets of data as well. So if I only, for instance, want to look at my exams, I could check that. It's going to go ahead and sort those down for me. It will adjust the total revenue just to reflect the cells that you can see. The exception to that, though, over here, your total treatment revenue is going to be for the entire data set. Otherwise, it starts to get a little crazy with some of these other calculations. But this is kind of nice if you just want to look at some specific areas in your practice. You can combine them. If I wanted to do exams and end of life, that's fine too. It will allow you to do that. Two other things as we kind of wrap this up is just how to access this. So if you are comfortable working with G Suite or Google Apps, specifically the app Google Sheets, I strongly recommend it. It has a lot of advantages over traditional desktop spreadsheets. What I really like about it is my entire team or anybody that I have involved in the process can be working with the data set at the same time that I am. I can see the changes they're making and vice versa. And it also ensures that we always have the most up-to-date data. There's never a question of, oh, well, which version of the spreadsheet do you have, or is this the right one, or I don't have this one on this computer. It's really nice to be able to access this data from anywhere. If you want to keep it in Google Sheets, all you would need to do is once you're in the file yourself, come up to File, and then basically you just want to make a copy. And if you select this option, it basically will give you a snapshot of whatever's on the screen. It'll pull it over into your Google Drive and give you a copy you can actually start editing. So the version that you're going to have that I link to, you can only view, but you are able to make a copy of it, and then it's kind of yours to keep and customize and use it however you want. The other option that you have, if you do feel more comfortable in a desktop environment and would prefer to use Excel, that's not a problem. All you'll do, again, come to the File menu and then come down to Download As, and then finally Microsoft Excel. And that will pull that file down, and you can make whatever edits you want to at that point. Here is my contact information. If you have any questions about the process that I just went over, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to help, and you're welcome to use this however you want. You can make it your own. You can not use it at all. You can do whatever you want with it. So hopefully you find it beneficial, and I really appreciate your time.